History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells of people where they have been and what they have been, where they are and what they are. Most important, history tells a people where they still must go and what they still must be. The relationship of history to the people is the same as the relationship of a mother to her child.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. As you see, that was Dr. Clark. And Milton and I have been doing a series at Clark House every Sunday at 3 o'clock. And Milton had the pleasure of representing Gaddafi.
The great debate.
The great debate. Clark House debates. We've had 10 of them, and I think you were on the 6th one.
Yeah, and I took the position of arguing for Muammar Gaddafi, and Professor James Blake took President Obama's position.
But you seem to be, everybody said that you were favorable towards Obama, since Libya.
I mean, I've always given the president just dues, you know.
Okay.
I think when you oppose certain policies, it's not a blanket, opposition. I think the president has accomplished quite a lot with his hands tied. You got a oppositionist, racist, obstructionist Republican Congress and now Senate controlling both houses. Yet he's managed to stop the Great Recession, reverse the economy. I mean, sadly, unemployment is still very high in our communities. As you know, historically, structurally, it hasn't changed. 50 years ago, when unemployment was 5%, in the white community, it was 10% in the African-American community. In December this past year, when it was 4.8% in the white community, it was 11% in the black community. So that's something we need to work a bit more aggressively on.
50% of all people are out of work. I mean,
exactly. These are official. You're right.
But we know the real deal is 8 out of 10 black men don't have a job.
Right, right.
And they're not telling anybody they don't have a job. They have some other hustle. And this has always been in existence.
And look at the Ferguson. Ferguson, the official statistic was 8% in the white community, 17% in the black community. That's the official. And then you have a situation where the police department, a police force of 53, only had 3 black police officers in a community which is almost 70% black. That's outrageous. Those are the challenges we still have to deal with.
I mentioned Ferguson, and we were talking about Selma, which you just, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Willie Mae Brown.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, it's good to be here.
And you experienced Selma last weekend, huh?
I've experienced Selma all my life, and last weekend was just the icing on the cake. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. It was an epic experience. There were, I think, approximately 80,000 people there.
80,000?
Or more. I've never seen.
In a town of 20, right?
In a town of 20. In a town of 20. We thought we were going to fall into the river. But, I have not heard of one bit of crime that happened on that day.
Shame on them if they had it. Huh?
It was amazing. It was amazing.
People were peaceful and...
People were peaceful.
Reflective.
Yes. And I saw King's Dream. Because 50 years ago, there was no way that you would see black men standing, kissing, and hugging a white woman in a crowd like that. It just wouldn't have happened. So I was able to view this, and not 1, 2, 3, or 4. There were several men and white women with black men and black black men with, and vice versa. And they all had children, a lot of them. They were changing.
Well, remember, the president is half Irish.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just had a good time yesterday.
Yes. So I was very happy to see that, and I was very happy to see how people interacted with each other, helped each other. We've come so far, especially in Selma.
And you're from the South?
I'm from Selma, yes.
And you always had a particular dislike of black men with white women? Was that one of your pet peeves?
No.
No?
I was never...
Isn't that normal for a black woman, though?
To see?
I mean,
yes,
isn't that
but
normal?
not in Selma. I mean, it happened, but not so blatantly where we were that day.
Okay.
It could not have been that way.
Right.
I talk about that.
Or any town, really?
Or any town.
Okay.
Not walking around.
Well,
like that.
marriage licenses were not a thing of, marriage licenses were not required until the issue of interracial dating and marriage came about.
That's true.
It was always something handled by the clergy. The wedding event didn't require a license.
That's right.
But when the notion that the mixing of the races was coming, states passed legislation requiring you to get a marriage license. And when you showed up, if you were black and the other was white, you couldn't get a license. And there are historic cases wherein people had to leave their home state, go to another state to marry because they were not permitted to marry. So the notion, and Willie Mae is from Selma, Alabama. She was there during the days of turmoil. And in reading her bio, which I may take a moment to read later, it's very moving because we met, I guess, about over a year ago.
Yes.
But I went to a reading that she was doing at a gallery, at Tabla Raza Gallery in Brooklyn. And she totally blew me away because she related her life as a child in that specific moment in time and how it touched not only her but her family, her mother, her father. And she saw the events as a child unfolding.
Yeah, I mean, you were there during the...
I was born and raised in Selma, Alabama.
No, but you were there during the when the cops attacked them?
I was there.
You were right there?
I wasn't on the bridge, but I was in Selma. I went to all of the mass rallies with my mother at Brown Chapel, Tabernacle Baptist Church, First Baptist Church. You see, one thing people don't understand is that the children were very, very involved in everything that was going on.
So you were 11, you said?
I was 11.
11, okay.
I was 11.
Okay.
The youngest person that went to the march was 15, I think.
Okay.
And
So
I
you
think one of...
weren't quite old enough to join the march?
Oh, no, I was.
Well, were you standing there watching it?
We watched everything. I have been... My first sit-in was when I was 10 and a half. And I jumped in a car on the back of a truck by myself across the Edmonds Pettus Bridge.
I understand that's the name of a Klansman.
He's a Grand Dragon.
Right. and a former senator. Senator or
And
congressman.
he's a colonel, I also think.
He was a senator.
Yeah,
He was
former
a colonel
senator.
in the
In the
Civil
colonel
War.
in the Civil
Civil
War.
War.
That's right, yes.
Say that again. Edmund
Pettus.
was a Klansman.
Yes.
Grand
King,
Dragon.
It's a grand,
first-
is it grand
He's a
dragon?
Grand
Dragon.
Dragon. Grand Dragon.
Grand Dragon.
Oh, wow.
And that's
heavy.
what a lot of the controversy was about.
Oh, that's
that we were
crazy.
disgracing the bridge.
Yeah, there's a huge campaign online to get the name of the bridge changed.
I don't believe that they should change the name of the bridge.
Wow.
And I'm going
I
to tell you
don't
No,
why.
that's
We
so
need to-
important. Oh,
You know,
that's so important.
oftentimes through history, the Europeans have stricken certain things from historical records.
Right, right,
You know,
right,
if
right,
it's not
right.
about them, it doesn't glorify them, they eliminate it.
Right, right,
and,
right.
and take credit for whatever.
Right.
I think we ought to keep that name there because we need to understand who Edmund Pettus was
Yeah.
and the
And what he
impediment
stood
that he
for.
was
That's right.
to people of color in that region
That's
at that
heavy.
time.
That's
We
heavy.
cannot forget we cannot erase the horrors of the past.
Right.
And we should not. Our young people should know the history of the good
That's right.
and the bad people. By eliminating his name and putting Malcolm X's name up there or something like that, it diminishes the significance of that march.
That's right.
And what
That's right.
happened to the people
That's right.
at that time. And I
That's heavy.
don't want to talk. Go ahead.
No, that's a
because
good point.
That's
But you know,
heavy.
the sad thing is a lot
That's
of people
heavy.
don't know who he was.
Right.
They
That's
refer
right.
to the bridge without knowing the history of Edmund Pettus. That's a sad thing.
but that's
you were
what
talking
we are
about
here to do, is
Right.
to
You
you
remind
were talking
them.
about being involved at such a young age, and I was thinking, at what age did you become like conscious of that there's a movement going on? How young were you?
Probably about 7.
Because I asked that, I wonder the current generation of our young folks, they're not exposed to that kind of knowledge and involvement in the kind of movements that young folks did in the 60s.
Well, you know,
But that was
we
in
didn't
your
have
face
you know
racism
what
down
we
there.
didn't have TV. We didn't have TV. We had radio. A lot of us just had radio.
Oh, okay.
And what happened is, not only were we faced with this racism, there's a war about to starting, and there. And so my parents, my father worked for the Southern Railroad, and he was away a lot of times. But my mother always had the radio on, and we always listened, and we had things to do, like our chores. So when you're in the back room ironing, you listen to the radio.
Right.
And they're going to tell you the news. And we had one black radio station, and that radio station programmed everything for us that was going on, and we were told to listen. And Reverend Frederick Douglass Reese, who was my pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church, made sure that we knew in school what was going on. So the children played a very important role in, desegregating their lives in these schools.
So when you look at that era and today, and our young folks today, what lessons can they learn from your generation, or do you think
They
it's a great
need to
challenge?
learn courage, and they need to learn dignity and respect, and they need to learn themselves above all. Who are you? You can't be like you, and what you do. Do what you
That's
do.
it, do you.
Do
you.
you. Do you, and don't follow someone else.
Yeah.
That's what Reverend King was trying to tell us.
Yeah.
You
Reverend
have
Sharpton says that all the time.
all the time. You have your own mission.
That's right.
Yeah.
God has a purpose for you.
For everyone, and you were
Everyone.
born with the concept.
But I think what the point is, as a black person, when you become conscious of the ridiculous, racism as it is. I think of Southerners of having an inferiority complex, and I'll be 74 in April.
God bless you.
So I came up during the era when Stephen Fetcher, and the only thing you saw in the movies.
What's that?
I'm born and raised in New York.
Okay.
Right? So that was a completely different world
Yeah.
to New Jersey, Fort Lee,
Yeah.
New Jersey,
Yeah.
because you crossed the river, and that was a Mason-Dixon line
That's right.
when I was a kid. You go from New York to Palisades Amusement Park,
You
and
couldn't go in
swim in the
Palisades.
pool
You couldn't
over
go
there.
to Palisades Amusement Park.
Or certain parts of town you couldn't go to unless you were spiffy and had a purpose for being there. But the mentality of the South, to me, has always been a little slow and not as exposed to as many people, because I'm the same age as Emmett Till. And when he was murdered, I could never understand what was going on. Because I lived on Sugar Hill, and we had plenty of white people all over the place. And Jewish people were very good to us in those days.
And us too.
You
And
know
us
what I
too.
mean?
Yeah.
And but I could never understand how people down south could take that kind of stuff.
I have to say this about the whites in the South, and I want to make this very clear. Not all of them were racist. There were a few that were not racist. And they would say that, they would tell you, but they were nigger lovers, according to the Klansmen.
Okay.
And they were targeted also. And so what they had to do was to protect themselves and their families. The Jews were very good to a lot of Southerners. Well, you know, Jews are by nature, they're merchants.
Right.
And so they had the shops and the stores.
Okay.
And they would help provide, you know, when people were hungry, they had the credit. You know, they gave credit.
They were the benevolent.
Yes,
whites.
they were benevolent. And they were very, very present in the march.
Yeah,
Very
I know,
present
that's what I
in the
mean.
march.
Yeah.
So your question is, how did we take this? There was a lot of ignorance. There were a lot of poor people in Selma.
Right,
A lot of
right.
poor people in Alabama.
Didn't know any different.
Didn't know any better.
That's right.
And I talk about that. I talk about that when we hear the story.
Willie Mae, you were going to allude to, there were two things that struck me. The rally that you were at,
The
when your
what?
father, the rally you were at when your father arrived and spotted you, and also the ride in the truck. Could you give us some of that?
Yes, there was always a march popping up, a mass rally. We were always planning. You know, Stokely Carmichael was there. You know, Mr. Lewis was there. Everybody was there, and so we had a lot of young people who were all like marshals. And so they put together these marches and these rallies and tell us where to go to sit in and to make a stand. So one day, there was a rally going on across the bridge, the Edmonds Pettus Bridge. And I was there. I had walked over from the house to go over to see what was going on. And I didn't know where my father was. And one of my friends said, "Come on, Willie, let's get on the truck and let's go to Montgomery." Montgomery is 50 miles from Selma. So I'm like, okay, I'll go. So I jump on the back of the truck. We could not be out at certain hours of the night and sometimes during the day.
Right.
My father was very strict.
For survival.
And he was also known to protect his family
Right.
by any means necessary.
Right.
So I jumped on the back of the truck, and I was so ready to go. And I looked up, and my father's 6'2", he's passed now, 6'2", so I looked up, and he's standing there. And I go, oh my goodness, what am I going to do?
He's going to see me.
He's going to see me, he's going to whip me. Because you know they whip you wherever you were. They beat you wherever you were. You take off that belt. You take the belt off when it's
I
slapped.
mean, girl, too?
Oh, yes. You get the same thing a boy gets. And I looked, and I'm sitting there. Actually, I was standing up, and he goes, and I go, there it is.
Wow.
He gave me the nod to go. And we jumped on the truck, and we rode to Selma to sit in at this cafeteria. And when we got, because this was a school cafeteria.
Yeah.
So when we got there, we sat in, we actually laid down on the floor on our backs. And then someone comes running into the room and says, they're coming. Night riders are coming, you guys have to get out of here. Whoa. And so, you know, back in the 60s, these cars were very heavy.
Right.
And they had these big tires.
Right.
And it was dark. It was like no street lights, anything. So everybody started moving out, getting in the cars, and you could hear these heavy doors slamming, bang, bang, bang. And I looked up, and all you could see was the car lights shining, bugs in the lights, and I'm standing outside. And everybody's in a car, and they're driving away. And I'm like, and this door opens to this car, and it was like a bluish gray car with the big points on the back. What do you call it?
Might have been a Cadillac or a Plymouth.
It was a Plymouth. It was a Plymouth. It was
Love
a
those
Plymouth.
cars. DeSoto
Yeah,
Plymouth.
it was a Plymouth. And this man said, come in, get in. And he sat me on his lap, and we rode 50 miles to Alabama, to Selma. Now you try riding a man's lap today. I never felt intimidated. I never felt anything. And he said,
you were how old?
And I was 11.
Yeah,
Okay.
different era.
Different era. Men. Men,
Yes.
real men. We couldn't sit on my father's lap after 8 years old.
Uh-huh.
He said, Kate, take these girls. Don't let them sit on anybody's lap.
Right.
And we couldn't sit on any men's lap anyway.
No.
You know, you could sit with your brother, you could sit with your sister, you know, uncles and stuff like that, but you couldn't do that. And we rode into Selma, and everybody got off at Broad Street. And from Broad Street, you could just go your way. And I got home, and my father was sitting on the front porch where he always sat, and he looked at me, and if anything was wrong, he would have known, because I would have told him. And he said, go in the house, take your bath, and go to bed. And that's what you did. So that's how we protected each other in the South. There was no dirty business there.
What's your view of the youth today?
I'm disgusted with a lot of it. I mean, I just have to just say,
Yeah.
I'm just disgusted. When I was down south, I saw signs, posters they were blue and white, and they had "no more" written, and "no" was crossed out, and "more," because someone had died there, someone had been shot there. And my story is to help these people understand, in this town, there should be peace. This man tried to kill you, and now you're killing your brothers, and you're fighting. So during the Jubilee in Selma, it was so tight. We were parking any place we could because it was just so many cars and so many people. And I wanted to take a picture of some houses that I had known as a child and how they look now.
Yeah.
So I'm driving on this street, and I get out to take the picture, and this young man comes over, and he says, do you want me to either watch or wash your car? He couldn't wash it because it was like so he had to be watched, W-A-T-C-H. So I said, no, but thank you. He says, this is a bad street. And that struck a nerve. And I said, how did that happen? Did you have something to do with this? Because I know this street. And he said, no. I said, well, how do you know it's bad? What's bad? He says, people die and people get shot.
Wow.
My girlfriends lived on that street.
Yeah.
Polluted by drugs and
Drugs, crime, gangs, the same thing here. We used to sleep on the front porch in the South. We didn't lock our doors. We didn't lock our doors. And here's this young man who's part of this group of people who's messed things up. We can't sleep on the porch anymore.
In your own view, how did that evolve? How did it get to where it is today?
I'm going to tell you what I heard. I heard that a lot of young women, this is not all of it, but I heard that a lot of young women left Selma, left the South, came to New York.
Like you.
Like me. And came, and not just New York, but other places.
When you left?
About 18 years old.
Oh, so 18, you became of age and you got out.
Well, I wasn't supposed to. Daddy, he told me to go and see about, he told me to go to college in California.
Okay.
He said, you go and continue school and go to college in California, because my brother lived there. And my mother said, well, Brown, I want her to go and see about her sister in New York. And I had a child also. And my dad said, well, yeah, I guess she could stop by. And I stayed. Because my sister wasn't raised the way she was living. You know. And my father had trusted her to someone that he thought would be more responsible. And this person spent his life with, they died together. You know, we married for different reasons. You know, some people married for love and support, and they work together and they build things together. Sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yeah, but what happened when the women left? You were starting.
And when the women left, they had children, and they couldn't take care of these children, and they couldn't provide for them, so they left their mothers back there and their grandmothers back in Selma, and they sent the children back, and the children stayed, and the things that they had learned in the North, they brought to the South with them, and they saw how open people were living, and so here enters the devil. And the
Take
devil
advantage of the
and they took advantage. And then they, you know, just started doing these things. But that's not all. They needed to be educated.
Right.
And I don't think that there were enough programs to help, because the South wasn't really ready for a lot of things. Like, they weren't ready for this march, believe it or not.
How is Selma today?
You know, what I heard, because I asked that question, I saw a lot of buildings closed, and I saw people that I had known had property. They didn't have that property anymore, just like in New York. And Selma, what I was told is that what's going to happen with Selma will become this small, quaint town, and we'll have the march, and people will live there. Selma is beautiful. It really is beautiful. There are a lot of mansions there, lots of mansions, but those mansions we couldn't go in when we were children. And I heard that Selma will be just, you know, they're going to build it up. HUD is coming in to support it.
Really?
Right. And but the focus would be on Prattville, Auburn, where the Roll Tide is, Auburn, a college town, and some of the other cities further away. And those people who don't have positions in Selma will work there, drive home, and in Montgomery. So they're going to do some building. They have a new mayor, Mr. Evans. The first black mayor was a friend of mine. We went to school together. I wrote him to let him know that I was going to be on your show and to send me some information about Selma, because he lives there and he knows a lot.
Right.
I don't know this other mayor well enough,
Right.
so I'm sure he'll be saying, I'll give you this information to let us know what's going to happen in Selma, because I am concerned about my hometown.
You know what we're going to do? I want to hear a little bit from the president there.
Okay.
I'm sure you promised not to crowd too loudly. I'm sure you were in tears half the time down there. Right?
For two reasons.
Really?
He was speaking in a historical place, the first black president.
In your home?
In my home.
Yeah.
On that bridge. And we were packed so tight that you could feel the breath of other people on your cheek. That's how many people were there. And just down here beside us, me and my girlfriend were standing there by the Rexall drugstore.
Rexall?
Yes. There were about 5 or 6 youth, 17, 18 years old. And this was the conversation. And the president was speaking. He was speaking, and we were trying to hear. You know, if Jeffrey don't get himself together, he's going to get killed too. You see, all of these, yo man, all these niggas, they do the same thing. My girlfriend says, excuse me, the president of the United States is speaking. They never heard her. They kept right on. They looked up like,
so what?
a lot of people weren't there for that.
Yeah.
Now, are these from outside town, or these are people from?
I don't
some-
know, because
okay,
people were
outside.
from everywhere.
All right.
He's
People
just
were
another
from
black man.
Just, they're just,
He's a part of them.
yeah. But a lot of people came to the march because they had nothing else to do. Or they wanted to sell something.
Wow.
Or they wanted to just to be there.
Pickpocket, maybe.
I don't know. But
All right,
here it is.
Let's go to the
Let's
president,
listen, yeah.
and let's all get a good exposure to President Obama and Selma, Alabama. This is the latter part of the speech.
Of course, our democracy is not the task of Congress alone, or the courts alone, or even the president alone. If every new voter suppression law was struck down today, we would still have here in America one of the lowest voting rates among free peoples. 50 years ago, registering to vote here in Selma and much of the South meant guessing the number of jelly beans in a jar, the number of bubbles on a bar of soap. It meant risking your dignity and sometimes your life. What's our excuse today for not voting? How do we so casually discard the right for which so many fought? How do we so fully give away our power, our voice in shaping America's future. Fellow marchers, so much has changed in 50 years. We have endured war and we fashioned peace. We've seen technological wonders that touch every aspect of our lives. We take for granted conveniences that our parents could have scarcely imagined. But what has not changed is the imperative of citizenship. That willingness of a 26-year-old deacon or a Unitarian minister or a young mother of 5 to decide they love this country so much that they'd risk everything to realize its promise. That's what it means to love America. That's what it means to believe in America. That's what it means when we say America is exceptional. For we were born of change. We broke the old aristocracies, declaring ourselves entitled not by bloodline, but endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. We secure our rights and responsibilities through a system of self-government, of and by and for the people. That's why we argue and fight with so much passion and conviction, because we know our efforts matter. We know America is what we make of it. Look at our history. We are Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea, pioneers who braved the unfamiliar, followed by a stampede of farmers and miners and entrepreneurs and hucksters. That's our spirit. That's who we are. We're Sojourner Truth and Fannie Lou Hamer, women who could do as much as any man and then some. And we're Susan B. Anthony, who shook the system until the law reflected that truth. That is our character. We're the immigrants who stowed away on ships to reach these shores, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free, Holocaust survivors, Soviet defectors, the lost boys of Sudan. We're the hopeful strivers who cross the Rio Grande because we want our kids to know a better life. That's how we came to be. We're the slaves who built the White House and the economy of the South. We're the ranch hands and cowboys who opened up the West, the countless laborers who laid rail and raised skyscrapers and organized for workers' rights. We're the fresh-faced GIs who fought to liberate a continent. And we're the Tuskegee Airmen and the Navajo code talkers and the Japanese Americans who fought for this country even as their own liberty had been denied. We're the firefighters who rushed into those buildings on 9/11, the volunteers who signed up to fight in Afghanistan and Iraq. We're the gay Americans whose blood ran in the streets of San Francisco and New York just as blood ran down this bridge. We are storytellers, writers, poets, artists who abhor unfairness and despise hypocrisy and give voice to the voiceless and tell truths that need to be told. We're the inventors of gospel and jazz and blues, bluegrass and country and hip-hop and rock and roll, and our very own sound with all the sweet sorrow and reckless joy of freedom. We are Jackie Robinson, enduring scorn and spiked cleats and pitches coming straight to his head and stealing home in the World Series anyway. We are the people Langston Hughes wrote of who build our temples for tomorrow, strong as we know how. We are the people Emerson wrote of, who for truth and honor's sake stand fast and suffer long, who are never tired so long as we can see far enough. That's what America is.
Now, to me, I'm sure you hear me say many a day, that's a blessing from God, as far as I'm concerned. And I take this personal because I lived through a whole bunch. Like I mentioned before, I'm the same age as Emmett Till. I could never understand that junk that went on down there because I never took any mess here in New York. But when I joined the Marine Corps and I was exposed to crackers for 4 years, I was lucky I survived that. I mean, they couldn't call me nigger. And I went to I went to the brig the first time somebody called me. And he wasn't even talking to me. I mean, that was my arrogance, because I was raised in New York.
So you're saying
it's a
the
struggle.
attitude was different here as opposed to the South?
Of course. Completely different. You talk about Selma. When I went down there, I didn't think I'd live through it all. Because I didn't realize that crackers were that stupid. That people were actually that stupid to judge you. And they sat, see, I can never understand the color thing. Because I came from a high yellow family and we had all kind of colors, and my mother was a little lighter than the both of them. You know, I mean, and she was the darkest one in the family. And the sweetest one was the one that looked white and sang. she was a doll, and so we had the variance. Of course, my aunt didn't like the dark-skinned ones, but we had racism and color amongst us. So when they sat in the sun trying to get our color, and everybody in my family tried to get my mother's color, and I do today. You see me run off to the sun? I love it being dark. I don't feel right when I'm light-skinned. I mean, but it was always an advantage for me in life. You know, I was corporate America, token black. I strolled in there and tried to sell everybody computers. And they thought I was, hey, I was from New York, so I was always around white people. I mean, a Jewish guy raised me, put me on my first plane right down here, 57th Street. So I had a completely different exposure to whites. My mother worked for a Jewish family in the 40s, all right? So my game was completely different.
Willie, could you, I'm sorry to interrupt.
But to get to the point of how we feel about Obama, now I'm sure you sat there and, I mean, this made me cry right here.
We cried.
I mean, to see a black man, half black, half white yet,
Yes.
in front of the Cracker Bridge,
Yes.
that's what we can call it, right?
Yes.
Head of the Klan, making this speech about America.
Yes.
And 50 years later, and we got the Klan and the Congress, running the Congress, acting a fool, persecuting a black man, and we got black men not liking Obama because his mama was white.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Where
crazy.
are we?
Perverse. That's perverse.
Where are we? And we're the spiritual people of the planet. We're supposed we always
The
showing.
Republicans hate him,
Yeah.
even though he bailed out Detroit
Right.
and
Right.
saved the auto industry.
did.
All right.
And actually the economy has been creating like 300,000 jobs per month now.
Right.
He's doing everything that they wish they could have done.
Because he's
They
smart.
Because
hate
he's
him.
smart.
Yeah.
That's what they can't live with. Because
That's
if you're raised all your life to think that you are superior just by birth, just
Yeah.
because you're white,
Right.
and then somebody comes and confounds all of that stuff you've been
That's
nurtured
right.
with,
Right.
you can never resolve it. And that's part of the problem. They can't resolve it or accept it. I
Paradigm
agree with
shift.
you.
Look at them in Congress. They're going crazy. This
Yes.
man is driving them out of their minds. They can't accept that warped mind.
To the extent that they're writing a letter to a foreign country, to
Right.
Iran.
Treasonous. A
Can you imagine
treasonous
saying,
letter.
listen, mess up this negotiation. They're going behind them to Iran.
What about this racist war criminal that comes here and sit in front of the Congress?
That's right.
A war criminal. Bibi
And
Netanyahu?
That's right.
Wait till Rabbi Weiss gets on next
Yeah,
week.
we'll
We're
have
going
him.
to have
We'll have
Rabbi
him.
Weiss on him to
He's
put him in
amazing,
his
isn't
place.
Yeah.
But I mean,
That was
this is the
very shameful.
madness that this.
course.
And we've got to see black people having learned our lessons, because if you survive to be our age, you've learned your lesson.
You've learned your lesson. You don't get old being stupid.
That's
You
right.
know,
That's
you
right.
really don't. And trust that you don't get angry because of color. And turn on. See, that's what happened to the young people. They became addicted to the greed and the selfishness and the self-centeredness that I mean, when you can hate being black
Yes.
and think that you got to be a thug and talk about your mama and
Your
curse at
sisters.
people and act low life and act like a nigga.
Yes. They treat you like one.
You know, you're going to treat everybody else around you like a nigga. Because nigga means low life and be any color.
Right.
So,
But maybe you could speak about one thing also that I always think about a lot. I think the big difference was that when you were growing up, the father and mother figure and the education that they imparted, I think that was very critical too.
That was
And there's a
critical.
great absence of that tonight.
Yes, it is. And it's also an absence of the nucleus in the family, the grandparents. You know,
Amen.
we take our grandparents and we put them in homes. We take our mothers and our fathers and we put them in homes. When that home is complete, then you can't run and tell mama, because then you got to tell daddy and grandmama too what happened. And if you go against one, you're going to get a whipping, and then they're going to whip you.
One by one.
You know,
Yeah,
and it wasn't abuse. They have this thing now with abuse. So we taught our children dignity and respect for the elders, respect for our parents. And you know what else we taught them? And my faith now is changed, but I remember, I'm Buddhist now, but I grew up as a Christian. We had God in the center. And when they, and I think this may have had something to do with it, when they took God out of the schools, a lot of kids did not pray until they got to school. They prayed, but they prayed again when they got to school. I think something happened there.
Interesting.
Because
the
we
key.
were taught someone is watching you all the time. So, Darren,
I always said a black man without God in his life is a dead man.
you're dead.
Or anybody.
Or anybody. You
Anybody.
have to have, and a man without
Especially
a
black
mentor.
people.
A man without a mentor,
A mentor.
is like
I
a
agree
dog.
with you. Absolutely.
This is what President Daisaku Ikeda says of the SGI. He says, a man without a mentor. I've gained a mentor. He doesn't know it yet, but he just found out. You know, you guys are mentoring me as well. We all have to have a mentor.
You see, you know what you're doing for us.
Well,
Oh, come on. You're a survivor. I
With-
mean,
with-
with your elegance
Thank you.
and presentation here today, I mean, you're showing how you can survive all this nonsense.
because I listened to my parents.
Yeah.
And I knew that they meant what they said.
Right.
And I carried that over, and I instilled that in my sons.
And you have God in your life.
And I have the law in my life.
Okay.
And the law is supported. You say God, I say law. But it is what it is. It's the same. We know what it is. And I have Jesus. I know Jesus.
Yeah.
I respect what the elders did.
Well,
You know, we're all in this
well,
together.
the whole theme of Christianity is supposed to be, you're supposed to be Christ-like.
God made man in his image.
Amen.
So then what are you? Inferior to that
you're going
image. That
against
image
that-
is not inferior.
No.
It's supreme. You don't go around begging for anything.
I don't know how Muslims justify going to heaven by killing people.
Well, they're not Muslims.
They're not Muslims.
They're not- so
That's not.
They're not Muslims any more than Klansmen were Christians.
Exactly.
But you
They
were
bore the cross.
speaking about niggers. May I read you something that I wrote
Please,
about
please.
niggers? Okay. This is from my Selma. And I must apologize to your audience. I'm going to be reading, so my head will be down. I grew up in a city and a town where Negroes were looked on as less than the men and women they were, human beings. Negro men and boys were addressed by first names or boy, and Negro women and girls were referred to as gal or addressed by first name, which was arguably less painful than being called a nigger, which was not a term of endearment. My nigger. What's up, nigger? No, you are the nigger in the South. Shiftless, lazy, dumb, good-for-nothing nigger. And when the term was put on you, hostility, anger, and disrespect were attached. I grew up where white men and white Women rode through areas in black neighborhoods in posses on horses, dressed in white sheets with pointed hoods and carrying torches of fire used to set shit-shack houses on fire and ignited standing crosses on lawns to terrorize Negroes or nigger lovers and set fear in children. Selma, I grew up with you in your town, with your people as a citizen of Alabama. And dear Selma, by the way, I grew up knowing that black men had hung from trees in the backwoods of the great state of Alabama. Selma not exempt from hunting black men through the darkness and running them into the Alabama River, which runs under the famous Edmunds Pettus Bridge, the one named for the famous Grand Dragon, where wild water beasts ate their bodies or they drowned in the tangled water forests. And I remember because Daddy had the hunting dogs, the two twins. One was Nina, a black hound who could track and find anything and anyone. She was the best, yet her identical twin was quite the opposite, just fast on her feet. Wake up, Brown. A banging on Dad's side of the house. Come on, Brown, get up. Who's that out there? Daddy asked from his bed. It's me, Brown, me and Tom. We got a boy that's broke out and running like a jackrabbit. So what y'all doing out here in town? Why didn't y'all call on Clay? He got the dogs. Come on, Brown. Now you know we've been using your hounds more than anybody. Daddy lay still for a minute, thinking, coughing, whispering to Mama. I don't feel like this shit tonight, Kate. That's old Tom them out there. They want them dogs of mine. What time my watch got over there, honey? 2. Damn, he said. Ask them who it is they looking for, Mama said. Daddy yelled outside. He could hear Nina and the rest of the dogs barking. Mr. Shell. The names have been changed to protect the hunters. Who you got running, boss? Daddy asked, pretending to be interested. Old Duke's boy. Oh no, Mama whispered. That boy is a good boy. What's going on, Brown? They got the wrong one. I know who they're looking for, and he's been gone since yesterday, said Mama. Don't worry, sister. I know what to do, Daddy said, reassuring my Mama. Brown, be careful, Mama whispered. Kate, you go check them children before I go. Come on now, get up, Daddy said. Mama put on a house coat and went into the room, returning to give Daddy the okay. The back door was open and I could see Mr. Shell with a tennis shoe in his hand under Nina's twin's nose. Daddy was dressed in his hunting clothes. Mr. Shell and Mr. Tom were smoking, and another white man had a wad of chewing tobacco in his jaw. They all had shotguns and red faces. I'm sorry. Daddy came back for his pistol. Mama locked the door. We'd all lay awake until the sun broke through the night sky, and we heard Daddy out in the junk house with the dogs. Nina was whining and dirty, her twin breathing heavy. Good dogs, Daddy said, patting them down and feeding them. Good dogs. When Daddy finally stepped into the house, I could hear Mama say, thank you, Jesus. How much further does he have to go? Ferguson's swamp, and he's free. He'll make it. He knows the way from there. Mama felt relief because every son was her son, and her heart prayed for them. The heart is a lonely hunter. So that's just part.
Irresistible. So you were beneficiary of her reading. No wonder you said you were blown away.
I sat just feet from her as she read. And she took me from Brooklyn
all the way
to Selma. And the importance of literature, the importance of reading, and our kids just don't understand.
They don't understand.
She's right. These are segments of a book that she's still writing.
Yes.
It's not even published yet.
It's magical, I must say.
But she carried me from Brooklyn that Sunday afternoon. And our young people need to know that a book, not an e-reader, not this thing.
Paper.
A book, paper. What reading a book can do for you, it translates you from where you are physically to where that book is, when the author has truly captured the essence of words and compiled them with a certain structure that draws you from your chair right into the story. And this is what you did. This is what you did. Whenever this book comes out, we're going to have you back before the book comes out. But when it comes out, we're going to make sure that people get to read this book. And every young person should be reading these types of stories. Not stupid romance novels that they sell on the corner and all that trash. You need to know your history. You need to understand it.
Me being a videographer, I'm listening to you and I've got scenes
in your mind
running behind you.
Well,
You know what I mean?
I'm trying very hard to make a one-woman show out of it. But what
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that.
what I really want to do,
Yeah.
what I really want to do, I want to show our children how we were treated. Why are you treating your brother this way?
That's right. Amen.
Why are you
Amen
doing this
that.
to your brother?
It's the biggest crime.
And why are you killing them? And don't you know you're being watched? And if I may, for a minute and a half, just read one thing to our children, because this is what white men did.
Please.
Just 1 minute and a half.
Or even more. I mean, it's irresistible.
You know, the classic example which happened to us and how we treat each other, the way we treat each other, is to watch the way black people treat Obama.
Yeah,
Like you're
absolutely,
saying,
yes.
these kids were sitting there in the audience, running their mouths.
They were down on the floor, playing.
You know, this man up in the White House has gotten there, but he's still a black man. Never mind what his mother was. It's how people treat him. And he can't be, he has to be the best of the best in order to get there. Now, I know we have beefs with him about Libya, all right? Now, but he learned his lesson. Milton and I were talking about how he learned his lesson in Libya, trying to do the right thing. Anything he's done in the last 8 years, or 6 years, has been scrutinized and torn apart, and there were obstacles always in his way, like anybody black. So the way they're treating the president of the United States, they disrespect him every inch of the way, and it's getting worse. But how do we disrespect him?
And you know,
It's
let
shameful.
me just tell these children this. I grew up in a place and time where white men looked admiringly at Negro women, made eye contact with Negro women, slept with Negro women, sexed Negro women under a faraway ebony sky, silver twinkling stars, and live music being hummed by all God's creatures, witnesses to the passion, witnesses to the crimes of man's inhumanity for man, for the same passion and desire that so condemned many Negro men to death, making eye contact or whistling at a white woman, tortured and killed for disrespect. Emmett Till of Mississippi, Mark Charles Parker of Mississippi, Willie Edwards of Montgomery, Alabama, and the beautiful white woman, Viola Loiseau, killed
Yes.
on an Alabama highway, lonely in the night. I grew up in a place and a town where the right to vote was not allowed to Negroes. Voting lines stretched several blocks long, and people waited, unable to use restrooms, eat at lunch counters, or shade themselves from the sun or rain, talk too loud in the line, or look at a deputy or shaft the wrong way. And when blacks did reach the door of the courthouse or voting area, one was told, "We're closed," or poked fun at because he or she couldn't write their name or spell their names. What's wrong with y'all? You can't spell, you can't read, you can't write. Can you sing? Come on, let me hear you saying something. And they all broke out laughing. Most Negro people humbled themselves, spoke to everybody in the South whether they knew them or not. Hey, hi y'all, good morning, good evening, good night, or a hand wave. and Negroes in close proximity to whites spoke or kept their heads down. Negro men stepped aside to allow white men and women to pass, tipping their hats, and you had better do it. Alabama, Selma. I recall the lines of finely dressed colored people in hats and coats, red fox stockings and pocketbooks, and handbags on women's arms with straight-held bodies, and faces pointed towards the courthouse, a people of integrity who woke up in the morning with their minds set on freedom. I remember hearing first and then seeing water stream from straight-held bodies because the reservoirs of tightly held bladders couldn't hold no longer, no more. Dams burst and water pooled underneath freshly ironed dresses and stained silk stockings as it made its way to a dirt sidewalk. Step over that baby and don't step in it, and don't stare at Miss Elnora. She can't help it. That's her glory down there. And I, as a child, stepped over the pool with a wide stride, looking down at the evidence of the struggle for freedom and equality, guided by will and a king of agitators as a mentor. We have to know that. And then they started the games with cow prodders and gunmen with Nazi German shepherd dogs. Water hoses and billy clubs were the weapons of choice, weapons of mass destruction, fear tactics and terroristic attacks, and fear of losing control over the help, the whipping boys, the slaves, and some Negroes, even in Selma, didn't get involved, didn't want to have anything to do with King, and didn't want him and his movement there. They even chastised their neighbors. What you going out there to that mass meeting for? He ain't doing nothing but trying to start a mess. Ain't none of his business. He need to go back to Atlanta where he came from. Many held contempt for King. Nichiren Daishonin, the true Buddha, says, they've been in hell so long, they've become comfortable. King knew this, and he pushed the movement to wake up the people in their minds. And once they awakened, they rose and stood up together with him. And the people came to love him and his nonviolent approach to freedom. He agitated the government and the haters. He united the youth and the teachers, the old and the progressive with one mind, a mind to change and to welcome his movement for change. And as Martin Luther King pushed through the South for change, life in Selma continued as it was known.
I have to stop you there. Yeah.
Willie
Thank
Mae
you for
Brown.
coming. Willie Mae Brown. You'll hear from her again.
Thank you.
What's the title?
God in me loves the God in you. Thank you for coming.
And souvenirs
Peace.
from Selma.